VikesNow, Dustin Baker, the Thursday, September 15th edition. A couple things, housekeeping. My voice is a little weird. I don't know why. Should be better in a couple days, so if this episode sounds a little wonky, it's because my voice has weird things going on with it. Also, yesterday, or the day before, in one of the episodes, I talked about the Vikings going for it on 4th and goal from the 5, and a commenter was correct. I was inaccurate, and I apologize. It was 4th and 1 on the 5, and they scored a touchdown. So it wasn't quite as impressive as I made it sound. So my apologies for boning that up. Try to minimize that in the future. But alas, we're here to talk about Eagles-Vikings. The Vikings face some substantial obstacles on Monday Night Football, in my estimation. So we're going to chat about those. There's about 5. And it ain't all sunshine and rainbows for this game, even though there is momentum and enthusiasm that the team can do big things because they beat the Packers' ass 23-7 in a relatively dominant performance. So let's get into some of these obstacles or things you should be concerned about for Vikings-Eagles. Foremost, now that the secret's out of the bag, that Justin Jefferson is still good and using quasi-zone coverage isn't smart, now he's going to be the focal point, which he should have been for the Packers defense last week. So suddenly, I think it was reaffirmed or reconfirmed that Justin Jefferson is a marvelous wide receiver, and whatever the shit you want to try and get cute or be the coolest kid in school that the Packers tried ain't gonna work. So I believe that from here on out, not just the Eagles game, that there'll be a new scheme against Justin Jefferson, and it should be on display Monday, wherein he ain't going to be wide open for beautiful crossing routes over and over, because if that's not curtailed, then every defensive coordinator that goes up against him is an imbecile. So know that Jefferson will not be quite as wide open unless we really got the special sauce, O'Connell that is, to make him wide open at all times. There's no need to panic, though. There are other options in the Vikings wide receiver core throughout the game on Sunday. I kept, nudging my wife, saying, I don't think they remember Adam Thielen's on the team. Like, he was a footnote. They just went to Jefferson over and over. It was profitable, and therefore I think Thielen only had 2 catches, and that was a slow day's work for number 19. So I think that this game can be more like we're used to, in the sense Thielen, gets at least 6-7 targets because, as you know in your bones, he's worthy of that, especially in the red zone. So the grand takeaway is that Jefferson shouldn't, in theory, be as wide open as he was, and therefore it won't be a complete track meet for Jefferson. The next one is probably the biggest concerning item about this game because it pertains to the matchup. The run defense of the Vikings. Here's the deal. Even when the Zimmer defense from 2014 to 2021 was rocking and rolling, which for 6 of the 8 years it was never really a marvelous run defense. It was always upper echelon for cornerback performance and then Harrison Smith in the back end. It was a defense that was usually designed to prevent the big play via the pass. Therefore, especially as the Zimmer era tailed off, the run defense for the Vikings was shitty. And you can feel it in your bones that last year and 2020, that anytime an opposing running back carried the ball, it was like, oh God, here we go. This will be at least 6 yards. And it generally was. I've joked a couple times on various shows and podcasts that I used to get excited last year when it turned out to be 2nd and 6 after a running back got the ball, because it felt like a good deal that we only allowed 4 yards. Fast forward to 2022. Now, I know that Ed Donatel probably drew up the game plan against the Packers to limit Rodgers and prevent his big play capability. Still, the Vikings gave up 6.2 yards per rush, which ranked 5th worst in the NFL in Week 1. So you have to ask yourself, is it because they were like, fine, we're going to let A.J. Dillon, Aaron Jones do their thing as long as we put the clamps on Christian Watson, Sammy Watkins, Romeo Doubs, and those other guys that they have, we're going to be just fine. And if that was the game plan, it worked. But we don't know for sure if they're capable of stopping the run. They didn't do it last year. They didn't do it against the Packers. And what do the Eagles do well? Let me tell you, not breaking news, the Eagles run the football well. Last week against the Lions, they had 4 different dudes score rushing touchdowns. Jalen Hurts, Miles Sanders finally got one after he didn't score one at all in 2021. You fantasy football manager, you know all about it. Kenneth Gainwell and Boston Scott, 4 rushing touchdowns. This is what the Eagles do well. Even Hurts himself scampered for 70 or 80 yards. So if you consider the Vikings defense, a weakness, you're going up against a team that likes to run the ball and has multiple dudes who can do it and do it really quickly. Speedy guys. It's not a good combo. A suspect run defense where the verdict's still out about if it's reformed and good in 2022 against a robust cast of characters that could run the football. That should probably give you the most anxiety about this matchup in general. Now, if Ed Donatel knows his shit, then he'll flip the script and he'll say, all right, this week we're clamping down Miles Sanders, Boston Scott, Jalen Hurts' mobility. That's what we're doing. If they're going to get some stuff over the top to Dallas Goedert and A.J. Brown, great. Devonta Smith, fine. We'll allow that, but they're not going to beat us on the ground. Perhaps we'll see that. But for now, the numbers tell us the Vikings' run defense didn't play well against the Packers, and bada bing, the Eagles' run offense did play well against the Lions. The next one, I'm going to call it out again. If you watched yesterday, it's already been announced, is that mobile quarterbacks are a thorn in the side of 2 entities. And those entities are the Vikings in general and Ed Donatel. That's not a good formula going into Monday Night Football because in the past, Ed Donatel's defenses aren't overly efficient against mobile quarterbacks. Josh Fry was correct. And then you, if you've been a Vikings fan for pretty much however long, you'll know if a mobile quarterback's on the docket, even with Zimmer, the good version of Zimmer, like Trubisky, like the only time Trubisky would do anything against the Vikings is if it was 3rd and 8, all the receivers are covered, he'd take off and scamper, and it would drive me nuts, and it probably drove you nuts. So historically, since mobile quarterbacks have become a thing, the Vikings don't play well against them, and neither does their new defensive coordinator. Look over at the other side of the field. Who is that? That's Jalen Hurts, and what does he do? Quarterback mobility. So that one I will be watching intently. And here's the deal on all of these little topics, really, is that if they can fix these, then that's really a symbol of a new era, and things are going to be a lot better. But what I know historically in my Vikings DNA is that mobile quarterbacks aren't friendly, nor has the run defense from the past couple years been good at all. So we shall see if it changes on Monday. The last 2, Monday Night Football road games for the Vikings are not good. Not one bit. I posted on Twitter that the Vikings haven't won a road Monday night game against a team not called the Chicago Bears since 2008. The last time the Vikings played a non-Bears team on the road on Monday and won was 2008 against the Saints with Gus Frerotte as quarterback, Adrian Peterson's second year. If you are nervous about Eagles-Vikings, you should be, because in the last 13 years, the Vikings on the road on Monday Night Football do not win unless they're at Soldier Field. And the Soldier Field thing is new. It's 2017. Case Keenum took over for Sam Bradford, and they beat the Bears in Trubisky's first career start. And then these last 2 games, Cousins has got the Monday night monkey off his back, and they won at Soldier twice. But the long game, away games for the Vikings on Monday night are atrocious. They lose. A lot of times it was to Seattle. A couple times, I think it was the Jets, 49ers to start 2015. You shouldn't have usually good vibes about Monday night road games for the Vikings. All in all, on the road in team history, they win 35% of the time in Monday night road games. I think they're 14-26. So this is forever. And of course, road games are inherently a tougher test. So not very many teams at all have great records on the road on Monday Night Football, but the Vikings is not good particularly. So I'm nervous about that because I've watched this product since 1996, and every time a Monday night game comes up, I'm like, all right, is it at home? Is it in the Metrodome? Is it at TCF Bank? Is it at US Bank? If it is, I'm like, all right, I'm treating this like another game. We're fine. When it's on the road, I'm like, ugh. things are going to go bad. And I think that's where I'm at right now, needing a complete believe it when I see it in this Kevin O'Connell era to figure out if he can change the losing ways on the road on Monday Night Football. And my last one is that Philadelphia's defense in general, kind of like the Vikings, has a lot of talent, a lot of playmakers. I don't know if it's crazy deep. That's the one knock on the Vikings defense is we don't know if Brian Asamoah, Patrick Jones, Caleb Evans, if those guys are going to be good, then the Vikings have a pretty deep defense. But you're waltzing into that with an if. Same thing with the Eagles, in my opinion. The playmakers, the big guys, Fletcher Cox, Hassan Reddick, Jordan Davis, the new guy, Chauncey Gardner-Johnson, Darius Slay. That is a lot of headline material, guys you put on the billboard. So I know that they weren't gangbusters against the Lions. They surrendered 35 points to Goff, Swift, in the gang. But just like the Packers last week and the Eagles this week and then the Saints in 2 weeks, these are all really good defenses that the Vikings are seeing out of the gate. You should be concerned because the Eagles are probably cognizant of the fact that their defense mostly sucked in week 1 and they're going to be hungry to get back on track. They have the dudes to do it. So I believe that's my final reservation. And the final note on this particular episode, I think is apparent, but let me break it down. Here's the deal. The Vikings are 1-0 and the Eagles are 1-0. Look around, pull out your phone, go on ESPN's app or any app that has NFL standings. The NFC right now doesn't look too daunting. The Buccaneers quietly took care of business against a very underwhelming Cowboys team on Sunday night. But right now, it's the Bucs that are 1-0, and everybody else that's 1-0 is like, oh, every dog has its day. Therefore, because the momentum has climbed in the last 4 days for the Vikings knocking off the Packers, and because the Eagles were already considered an upper echelon NFC team, the winner of this Eagles-Vikings game goes to 2-0 and will be considered, at least for a while, as an NFC championship frontrunner. I don't know if that's hit you yet. You could be chilling late midnight Monday or Tuesday morning talking with me on this show, and the Vikings could be who the world is talking about as NFC championship bound. And my goodness, 4 weeks ago, we were doing shows arguing that the team isn't going to be mediocre anymore. Like we were defending the no rebuild stance and running it back. And I think the rest of the world's coming around to it, and it will be completely solidified and crystallized if they knock off the Eagles at home. So in that vein, it's very important. The same thing goes for the Eagles. I think people already want an excuse to get excited about them. And if they go to 2-0, then they look around the landscape, the NFC, and they're like, all right, it's us at 2-0, probably the Bucs, and that's about it. And even if the Bears pull off a win or the Giants, I don't know that anybody will take them seriously as contenders. For the Vikings and Eagles at 2-0, one of them will have the drum banged, and they will be considered frontrunners to reach the NFC Championship. That's all I got. We'll be back tomorrow for, let's see, one more. No, there'll be 2 more episodes before Vikings, Eagles, because Monday Night Football. So we'll be back Friday, and Skol, baby.